Hello students, it's nice to see you again. So this PowerPoint presentation will focus on how the law emerge, specifically legal norms. As I already mentioned on the previous video, law can also be seen as norm. So we're going to discuss what is social norms and what is the relation between legal norm and other social norm. So here are the topics: society and social norms and the legal norms. So it is fascinating to start this presentation with what Aristotle mentioned, as we are human as a zone politican. We are a social creatures. We cannot live without the presence of others. In every daily life, in almost every activities, every moments in our life, we need to interact to other human beings. That is why society is made, because at least two person or more living together, whereas they influence each other, dependent on each others, and tied to each others. The question is a group of people can be categorized as society? For instance, just people met in street, for instance. It is not. Society, it is a group of people who happen to be this at the same time. The important characteristic of society, it has to be organized. So what do we mean by organized? In order to be organized, we need to socialize first. Within that socialization process, people try to fulfill their own interests, and other people help them. We also help them to fulfill their interests. So what is interest anyway? Interest is individual or group needs that should be fulfilled according to Martokusumo. For instance, I can give you an example. University of Gajah Mada is a society because it's consisted of more than two people, and they interact to each others, and then they have these interests and rules in order to connect with each others. So Universitas Gajah Mada consisted of lecturers, and then there is also students, many of them, and the non-teaching staff. Right, so each of the person here got their own interests, and then we work together to fulfill the goals of higher education. For instance, lecturers, they want to do lecture because it's part of their passion. Nonetheless, they also get the job because they want to pay their bills. Um, it's different needs when it comes to students. Students come to Universitas Gajah Mada because they want to study, they want to finish degree, and later they want to get job. And other staff members also got their interest to go for working. And as a group, we work together to achieve higher education goals, which is research, teaching, and also community service. So those how society is built, with different individual needs, and then come up, work together. We help each other to fulfill our needs. There is no classes if there is no teachers and there is no students. And the university is consists of them. We cannot achieve the goals of higher education if it is not collective working within those people. Okay? Nevertheless, when we interact, there is possibility of conflict, right? So when it comes to conflict, social norms has its function to restore the situation into the order. For instance, there is this misunderstanding within the people inside the society, or maybe there's this kind of assault, for instance. The question is how to get back the society as it is before in order. So that's why we have norm. What is norm? In Bahasa, we call as kaidah or norma, social norma, norma social, guidance to think, to act to humans, which is the implementation of values established based on experiences. Guidance to think and guidance to act. We're going to discuss further on each of the social norms and each characteristic. But in general, guidance to think and act, and it represents the values based on society experience, because social norm grows along the society. Long ago, something it is known before, such as cyberbullying, the act, the behavior, that is not something we know before the development of ICT, information communication technology. Nowadays we talk about it, and now we think about how to regulate that, how to create these norms so that people will respect to each other. And it is also important to know that norms contain thoughts and values on what people do, what people shouldn't do, and recommend to do. It is about prohibition, it is about order, and also option. So that is the contents of norm itself. In order to act as its role to restitutio in integrum or restore the society as before the violation of interest occur, norm conducts its role as a social control, and it provides itself with sanction, right? So when someone violates other people's rights, they need to get this punishment. They have to get this punishment, while the victim should get compensated. That is why sanction is needed. I already mentioned before that norms grows along with society. Long ago, we don't have cyberbullying as a conduct. Right now, we talk about it. And society development itself becomes the source of norm itself. Uh, right now, we rapidly speaking through social media. That is why social norm regarding social media being discussed a lot. The ethics to contact other members of the university using social media being discussed a lot, right? So legal scholars have mentioned their opinion on what types of social norms that we have. From Mukhtar Kusuma Atmaja, Sachitra Raharjo, and Suryono Sukanto, at least 3 or 5 types of social norm, from religious norm, moral norms, decency norms, and legal norm itself. If you look at Sudikno Mertokusumo book on Introduction to Law or Mengenal Hukum, he divides types of social norm into 2 types according to the scope: norms in personal life and norms in interpersonal life. Norms in personal life consist of religious norm and moral norms. Why it is categorized as personal life? Because it's mostly the relation is between a person with God and within themselves. All right, with the inner self of them. It's different with interpersonal life norms, whereas we interact to each others and we need guidance or rules in interacting to each others, right? So it's according to Marta Kusuma, there are 2 types: decency norms and legal norms. Norma kesopanan in bahasa Indonesia dan norma hukum atau kaedah hukum. So here we are to the specific characteristic of each of the norms. A religious norm, it is a set of rules respected as a command from God. Typically, it is mentioned by the holy books, or maybe by preachers, for instance. We learn about the rules command from God, and the idea is to achieve peace not only here in life but also after life. It's different with moral norms, although it's the same, it comes from inner self. It is related to morality, and it's a human conscience about something. Is it a moral thing to do when we lie to other people, for instance? Next is decency norm. It's regarding appropriateness, custom, decency in society. For instance, it is so important to address senior or lecturers using correct prefix, for instance. Um, or as a junior, you have to say hello first instead of waiting your senior to say so. So that is decency norms. Next is legal norms. So if you look at Sudikno Mertokusuma book, you gonna understand that the legal norms function is to complete other legal norms, because not all human interest is governed by other norms. Other than that, there is this problem, whereas other norms provide sanction, yet the sanction might be categorized as super lenient, and it comes to human self-consciousness. So it is hard to enforce that. That is why legal norms typically strictly enforced, and in many cases officially enforced by apparatus, but not types of legal norm. So there is also legal norms that is enforced by society as well. We're going to discuss that further through this first uh, three meetings of introduction to law. So now you already understand what types of social norm with its characteristic. So we're going to discuss this hypothetical case, whereas we're going to identify what types of social norms relates to this case. Okay? Let's read it together. Alex works as surgeon. In his neighborhood, he never makes connection to others. He is grumpy and often comes home wasted because he's just tired. His work consumed him too much, and one day he was collided in a car accident. During his stay at the hospital, he gave bad temper to doctors and nurses, and sadly to say, no one from his neighborhood visited him. So, what are social norm relates to this case? Keep your question. We're going to discuss this when we do our online discussion, right? As I mentioned before, that society and social norms is so relates with human interest and also human development. So when it comes to sanction to restore society in order, as I already mentioned before, religious, moral, and decency norm are providing this lenient sanction, and it's not immediate and give deterrent effect, such as some of common in religious norm can only be enforced after life. So if you commit something according to religious rule, and it is not governed by other social norms, even legal norms, and typically they will say that, oh, you committed sin, and uh, it is important for you to know that it's going to be enforced after life, for instance. And also there is many development of human interests are not covered by those norms. For instance, I mentioned the development of technology, for instance. It is not mentioned by other social norms. How the rise of extremism and terrorism, it is also not governed by other social norms. And we need strict and immediate sanction to it. Otherwise, the public order would not restore as it is if we don't have legal norms. So what is the characteristic of legal norms? Legal norms comes from society. It is not only regulation by the government though. The characteristic of legal norms, where is there is society, there is law, and it typically comes with sanction. Okay? So not always come from the government. We're going to discuss further about that. Law or legal norm doesn't mean 100% regulation. We're going to discuss how customary law, how judgment law or judge decision can also be categorized as a norm. For instance, someone breach a contract, although already agreed upon to pay some settlement, for instance, but failed to do so. So judge decision on the case is the norms for both parties to follow. Another thing about legal norms, although it has its function to complete other social norm, law always behind the facts because it portraying the moments that already occur. Such as, if you still remember in the case of Bali bombing, so the Bali bombing occurred first, and then we realized we don't have terrorism law. That is why we, after that, as a nation, created terrorism law. That's the same with bitcoins, for instance, nowadays, or maybe other types of development in ICT that need to be updated into regulation or into legal norms in society. So that is the characteristic of legal norms. So what is the similarity and differences of those norms? You can check on Sudikno Martokusumo books, whereas he provides this comparison. So you can see that the interpersonal norms focus on the public order rather than only focus on the inner self expectation. And the focus is on action. For instance, it is so well known when it comes to law and order. As long as it is still in your mind, you cannot be sanctioned through national law, for instance. For instance, you are thinking to steal something. If you never do any preliminary action, attempted to prepare to steal, then you cannot be criminalized because it's still in your mind, it's still an intention. Because focus of legal norm, decency norm, and specifically, for instance, regulation under the national law is human action. Okay, so what we're looking for the legal norm is outside human or sikap lahir. So it doesn't matter, for instance, in if you use your helmet because you are forced by it, or it is from your awareness, for instance. But we hope that it is from your awareness because in order to follow law regularly and obey what the state order mentioned, it is important to come from awareness. But as long as you follow it, you wouldn't be sanctioned. Right? So other thing is not only legal norms provide obligation, but also it provides rights. For instance, if you look at our constitution, you're gonna see that we have this chapter focusedly on guarantees of human rights, right? Right. So when I say that legal norms provide more uh, stricter sanction and also immediate sanction with expectation of deterrent effect, the question is whether without the presence of legal norm, other social norm does not function. That's not the conclusion. The conclusion is legal norms complete other social norm. Other social norms still work on their own, right? So why do people follow that kind of social norms, although it doesn't have the immediate sanction? According to Posner, there are four reasons. First is advantageous transaction. So, for instance, you give this appreciation and respect to your senior because you believe that the senior will also act by helping you as a junior, for instance. It is advantageous transaction. And it can also be enforced by individual emotion. For instance, in a case of professional association, such as lawyer association, for instance, individual emotion is so important when it comes to enforcing ethics rule within the members of the professional association. Next is by expression of disapproval or disapproval, by ridicule in extreme cases, by ostracism. For instance, in decency norm, people follow it. For instance, in one certain area, it is prohibited for you to come home after 11, for instance. It is not under the regulation by the law, but it is under the decency norm. If you do violate that norm, people will talk about it, and they may also confront you because your action. Okay, and it is also internalized out of sense of guilt or shame. We violate the rules of religion, for instance, and we feel guilt or shame because we do so. It is not something outside us, but it is come from our inner self. So other thing to add to the relation between law and other social norms, as law is a complement other social norms, so it is not to neglected the function of other social norm, or erode the function of other social norm. For instance, in case of contract, every day we do sell and purchase. For instance, today you buy a book from your friend, for instance. As long as both parties agree and there is no violation of the rights and the obligation, people follow it even without contract. For instance, you are agree in your neighborhood that you will pay some amount for the security purposes. If you follow that, and there is no violation to it, you don't have to write a contract according to Indonesian law to do so, for instance. But it is act based on the advantageous transaction. It comes from enforced by the society, and your individual emotion might be. So we don't need the enforcement from the state law, for instance, or even putting into a legal norm, because the function of legal norm is to complete other social norm. That is all for this video. See you again on the next video.